we'll be talking about the salivary glands, its general structure, and the different types of salivary glands in the human body. So the salivary glands that are glands that produce saliva. They secrete different kinds of enzymes that that help initiate digestion, like lysozyme and lactoferrin. And their main function is basically to lubricate and like moisten the food that is being ingested, as well as the oral our oral cavity, so that it can pass through the esophagus and actually end up in our stomach. Right. So we have three main salivary glands. We have the parotid gland, the submandibular gland, and the sublingual gland. So we have the parotid gland. It's rather serous in nature. It's 100% serous, whereas the submandibular and the sublingual glands are seromucous glands. The general structure of a salivary gland includes the fact that it is surrounded by a connective tissue capsule. So any organ in the human body would be surrounded by connective tissue, not if not any, most of the organs are surrounded by connective tissue capsules. And these salivary glands have two main kinds of cells. They have functioning cells and supporting cells. So the functioning cells are also known as the stroma, and the parenchyma is basically the supporting cells. Now we can talk about the different kinds of cells. We have three main kinds of cells in these salivary glands. We have the serous cells, the mucous cells, and the myoepithelial cells. So the serous cells are cells that secrete protein, whereas the mucous cells are cells that secrete mucin. So the serous cells are rather pyramidal in shape and they have round nuclei. As you can see in the picture here, they are they are pyramidal in shape. They have a round central nuclei and they have apical granules which join to form an acinus, which is like a grape-like structure and secretes proteins or enzymes. And all these cells and the apical secretory granules, they are all held together by tight and adhering junctions. Similarly, we have the mucous cells. They are rather columnar. So the serous cells are pyramidal in shape, whereas the mucous cells are columnar in shape. In this picture, they appear to be pyramidal, but they're actually columnar cells. They have compressed basal nuclei, and then again, they have apical granules, but this time they're filled with mucins, which, when hydrated, form the mucus. And we need to know a simple concept that the mucus cells always form um, mucus tubules and they do not join to form acini, whereas serous cells always join to form an acini. So that's a very basic concept that we should know, that we must know. Another kind of cells that we have is the myoepithelial cells. Now, these are just cells that surrounds the mucus tubule and the serous acini, and they're just small, like flattened cells that help in the movement of the products in and out of the salivary like ducts, secretory ducts. And we need to also talk about something known as the serous gemmuline. So now these are actually tubular-acinar secretory units where they have like mucus tubules and these mucus tubules are actually surrounded by a cluster of like serous cells. This is what a serous gemmuline is. Yeah, you can see it here in this picture that it is surrounded by a mucus cells and they have mucus cells which are surrounded by uh, some serous cells. So that's about the different kinds of cells in the salivary glands. Now we have the now we have we're going to talk about the duct systems and the different types of glands. Right. So we're going to talk about the different types of glands, different types of ducts. So as we know, every gland in nature itself, it has secretory cells and ducts. And now these salivary ducts actually open into the oral cavity. So from the acini, from the secretory acini and the secretory tubules, these tubules and acini they actually open into they empty into like intercalated ducts, which further go and which empty into interlobular ducts. I'm sorry, which empty into it's written wrong here. Actually, in just a second. Yeah, sorry. So these secretory acinine tubules, they secrete the respective products, the proteins or the mucus, which empties into intercalated ducts, which further go and empty into a striated duct, which further goes and empty into the excretory duct, which is the largest duct, which is lined with like stratified squamous epithelium. So these different kinds of ducts, they actually have different kinds of epithelium. For example, the intercalated duct itself, it has simple cuboidal epithelium cells, and it has a round centric nucleus with many cell organelles, which for simple cuboidal epithelium, which for like as you can see in this picture, like so this is simple cuboidal epithelium, which further open into striated ducts. Now these striated ducts actually they have they're cylindrical in shape with a rather basal nuclei and with cell organelles, and these ducts act these cells itself they are highly folded, and are filled with high amounts of mitochondria, which causes them to appear striated under a microscope, hence the name striated ducts. Now, these striated ducts actually open into the excretory ducts, which further go and which further go and open into the nasal cavity, and they're lined by the stratified squamous epithelium. Now we have three different kinds of glands. We have parotid gland, the submandibular gland, as well as the sublingual gland. So as you can see the position of these glands respectively. So the parotid gland is right in front of our ears, the submandibular gland is underneath the mandible, and the sublingual gland is underneath the tongue. Right? So parotid gland, as we mentioned, is 100% serous gland. As since it is serous, it is going to be a branched acinar type of gland, and these serous cells, as we know, they secrete proteins or alpha amylase, which is another kind of protein. It starts the hydrolysis of different kinds of carbohydrates, and it helps in the digestion, like the initial digestion of ingested food. Next is the submandibular gland. The submandibular gland, which is present underneath the mandible, is actually a rather seromucous gland. So, it is a seromucous gland, meaning it is going to have both serous acini and mucous tubules. So, it is a branch tubular acinar gland. So, it is a branch tubular acinar gland, but it is mostly serous. And it like I mentioned before, it forms a serous demilude, where we have small like mucous tubules that are surrounded by serous cells. Now, again, this since this gland is mostly serous, it secretes alpha amylase, lysosomes, and just basic enzymes because it's mainly serous. Again, the sublingual gland, which is present under the tongue, is one of the it's the smallest of the three. It again has blanched tubular acinar gland because it has a mixed gland, but it is mostly mucus, right? And then we have different kinds of like minor salivary glands, which are mostly mucus, except for the one nibner glands of the tongue, and glands like small minor salivary glands that you see at the base of the circumvallate papillae of the tongue again. And these minor salivary glands also tend to secrete IgA, which has more of like a defensive function in like it's an antibody. So that's about it. I hope that made sense. Thank you.
Thank you.